So our next technique is the Cracked Roses card. And very similar to the last one, that we're going to be using embossing glazes with it, but we're going to be using a crackle texture paste. So for this one, we're going to put it through the stencil and put our powders on it, but we need to let it completely dry and crackle before we do melting of our powders. If you try to do this while the texture paste is still wet, you are not going to actually have your crackle and powder or crackle powder. It's going to affect the results. So I'm making sure that this part here that has a flat edge is just a little bit off my card front. And then I'm not going to be putting texture paste in this piece here, and I'm also not going to be putting it in this rose here. So if you want, you can use tape and mask off any of the areas that you don't want. But what I tend to do, and I'm just going to leave that tape there for right now, I tend to use a smaller palette knife so I have a little bit more control over where it goes. So that I have everything in place, I'm going to take my texture paste, and this tends to be a little bit of a thinner consistency than the regular texture paste. It's almost like soft butter. So I don't want to get that leaf in there. If you get a tiny little bit in an area you don't want, it's not a big deal. Like for instance, I did get some in there when I was doing the sample. It doesn't ruin the card. So don't worry about it if you happen to get it in an area you don't want. You can always call that one a practice one if you really end up not liking it. And I love the crackle texture with this one because it makes the roses almost look like they're cracked glass mosaic tiles. Just a really pretty look. So close the container so it doesn't dry on me while I'm doing the rest of this. Lift this up. And you won't see the crackle until it's dry. So right now it looks like regular texture paste, but you'll see once it's dry that it's not. So while it's still wet, I'm going to add my powders. Oh, one second. Before I do that, I want to lift this up. Take my excess paste off of here while it's still wet. And then put a scrap piece of paper to catch that powder underneath there. And you can choose as many colors as you want. I'm trying to keep it somewhat simple. I'm only using 4 colors here. Pink and purple for the flowers, and then 2 different green shades for the leaves and the stems. I would have loved if there was a darker pink in the embossing glazes, but it doesn't exist, at least not yet. So I'm doing pink and purple. The only other flower color that I had that I kind of would have considered is the, there's a red, but it's an orangey red, and it's not really one of my favorite colors. I like reds, but on the bluer red side. So I chose the purple instead. So I did my stem with the darker green, and then I'm trying to do the base of my leaves as well. Again, it's not going to matter too much if you happen to get, say, some purple or pink on your leaves, or you get some green on your flowers. It just looks really pretty when it's done. And sometimes I've even put a little bit of the wrong color on an area on purpose, just because it still looks fine. Take the tape off of there. Tap this around. If I were to just just pour this, I would end up having streaks of the color if I had a large section that I missed with the powder, which is why I tap it around first and then take it off, so that that powder can go anywhere, well, dance around and look a little bit more natural before before tipping it to the side. Now this has to be completely dried before I melt the embossing powder. I must have touched it or something. There must be a little bit of a dampness here along the this part here, which is why the powder is sticking to it. But once it's completely dry, I can take a brush and I can dust that off. Let's put this to the side so that I don't accidentally touch it while it's drying. I have my mixed glaze container, because once again, you can't separate these and put them back. There we go, and let's close these guys up. I will see you once our image piece is completely dried. Alright, so our image piece is completely dried. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see all the little tiny cracks in there. I haven't melted the powder yet, so now's the time to melt the powder. I've gotten all the excess that I wanted to get off of there, and now I can melt the powder. Away. So because the texture paste was completely dried, it didn't puff up, it didn't affect the texture paste in any way, shape, or form. It simply melted the powder. And what I love about using these glazes with the Crackle, like I said, it looks like cracked glass, but they seem to me, it enhances the crackles. And I love, it almost has a little bit of a glittery, shimmery look just because those little crackles hit the light. But just a fun technique to do. Very simple card, put it onto the card base, add a sentiment. This would be perfect for a wedding card if it was a wedding theme, or Mother's Day, or just a feminine birthday card, or thinking of you, or whatever. And there you go, the cracked roses card. We'll see you in the next video.